The rain drummed against the tall windows of the penthouse office, each drop catching the amber glow of the city lights below. Sarah Martinez sat across from James Richardson, the mahogany desk between them feeling like an ocean of polished wood. The contract lay open between them, its crisp white pages a stark contrast to the warm lighting of the room. "Article 7, James said, his voice steady but distant. "No physical intimacy of any kind during the duration of this arrangement." Sarah nodded, her fingers tracing the edge of the document. The marriage contract was thorough, covering everything from public appearances to separate living quarters within his sprawling estate. It was a business arrangement, nothing more. Her father's debts would be cleared, and James would secure the merger he desperately needed. 6 months, and then they would quietly divorce. "I understand," she whispered, though her heart felt heavy as lead. The wedding had been a grand affair, attended by business associates and society figures who smiled and congratulated them while cameras flashed. Sarah had worn her grandmother's pearls and a dress that cost more than most people's cars. James had been the perfect gentleman, offering his arm, speaking the vows with convincing warmth for their audience. But once the doors of the Richardson mansion closed behind them that first night, the performance ended. James showed her to the East Wing, a beautiful suite of rooms with French doors opening onto a private garden. He explained the household schedule, introduced her to the staff, and wished her good night with the same courtesy he might show a business partner. The days that followed settled into a comfortable routine. Sarah took her morning coffee in the sunroom, tending to the orchids that had been neglected in the greenhouse. James left early for his office and returned late, often carrying the scent of expensive cologne and the weight of corporate stress on his shoulders. They saw each other at dinner most evenings, sitting at opposite ends of a table meant for 12. The conversation was polite, careful. He would ask about her day, and she would inquire about his work. Neither ventured beyond the safe boundaries they had established. Sarah found herself studying him during these quiet meals. The way his dark hair fell across his forehead when he was tired. The small scar near his left temple that she wondered about but never asked. The way his eyes sometimes seemed to hold depths she wasn't allowed to explore. 3 weeks into their arrangement, Sarah began having the dreams. At first they were fragments. Her childhood home, the sound of her mother singing in the kitchen, the way sunlight used to stream through the lace curtains. But as the nights passed, the dreams grew darker, more vivid. She would find herself back in that terrible day when she was 8 years old, hiding in the closet while voices shouted and things crashed in the rooms below. She would wake gasping, her nightgown damp with perspiration, her heart racing like a trapped bird. The memories that she had carefully locked away during her waking hours seemed to have found the key to her sleeping mind. James, in his room at the far end of the West Wing, remained unaware of her struggles. The mansion was old and well-built, its thick walls designed to keep secrets. But on the night everything changed, the walls couldn't contain her terror. Sarah had gone to bed early, exhausted from a restless week. She had been working in the garden most of the day, her hands deep in soil, trying to coax life from the neglected flower beds. The physical work usually helped quiet her mind, but not tonight. The dream began as it always did. She was 8 years old again, small and frightened, listening to the sounds of violence from the next room. But this time, the dream didn't end where it usually did. This time, the door opened, and she saw her stepfather's face, twisted with rage and alcohol. The scream that tore from her throat was raw and desperate, carrying 20 years of buried pain. It echoed through the mansion's halls, shattering the careful quiet that had become their normal. Sarah jolted awake, but the terror followed her into consciousness. She was shaking violently, tears streaming down her face, unable to distinguish between past and present. The darkness of her room felt suffocating, filled with shadows that seemed to move and breathe. She didn't hear the footsteps in the hallway, didn't notice when her door opened quietly. It wasn't until a gentle voice said her name that she realized she wasn't alone. "Sarah." James stood in the doorway, his hair disheveled, wearing only pajama pants and a t-shirt. His face was etched with concern. "Sarah, are you all right?" She tried to speak, tried to explain, but the words wouldn't come. The sobs that shook her body seemed to originate from somewhere deeper than her lungs, from a place she had kept locked away for so long. James hesitated for only a moment. Then, as if making a decision that went against every clause in their carefully drafted contract, he crossed the room and sat on the edge of her bed. "May I?" he asked softly, his hand hovering near her shoulder. Sarah nodded, unable to trust her voice. The moment his arms encircled her, something inside her chest loosened. The panic that had felt like drowning began to recede, replaced by the steady warmth of human contact. "It's okay," he murmured against her hair. "You're safe. Whatever it was, it's not real now." "You're safe." She found herself pressing closer to his warmth, her face buried against his shoulder. He smelled like soap and something indefinably masculine, comforting and real. His hand moved in slow circles on her back, a gesture so tender that it made her cry harder. "I'm sorry," she finally managed to whisper. "I didn't mean to wake you." "I know the contract says." "Forget the contract," James said firmly. "Right now, you're a person who's hurting, and I'm a person who wants to help. Nothing else matters." They stayed like that as the storm outside gradually quieted. Sarah's breathing slowly returned to normal, her trembling subsided. But James didn't move away. When she finally lifted her head to look at him, she found his eyes filled with a gentleness she had never seen before. "Better?" he asked. She nodded, suddenly aware of how close they were, how her fingers were clutching his shirt. "I should explain. Only if you want to," he said. "But you don't owe me any explanations." Sarah took a shaky breath. "Bad dreams. They started a few weeks ago, memories from when I was a child, my stepfather." She couldn't finish the sentence, but she saw understanding flicker in James's eyes. "How often?" he asked quietly. "Almost every night now. I thought they would stop, but they're getting worse." James was quiet for a long moment, his thumb unconsciously tracing patterns on her arm. "You shouldn't have to go through this alone." "The contract was written by lawyers who don't know anything about being human," James interrupted. "Sarah, look at me." She met his eyes, seeing something there that made her heart flutter in a way that had nothing to do with fear. "Would it help if I stayed?" he asked. "Just until you fall asleep. I could sit in the chair by the window." The relief that flooded through her was overwhelming. "You would do that?" "I would do a lot of things for you that aren't in any contract," he said. And there was something in his voice that made her wonder if they were still talking about her nightmares. James did stay, settling into the wingback chair near the French doors. But sometime during the night, when Sarah whimpered in her sleep and reached out unconsciously, he found himself back on the bed, holding her against the dreams that tried to drag her under. When morning came, Sarah woke to find herself curled against James's chest, his arms wrapped protectively around her. For a moment she lay still, savoring the feeling of safety, the way her body fit perfectly against his. "Good morning," he said softly, and she realized he had been awake, watching over her. "Did I double," began, embarrassed. "Sleep peacefully?" James finished. "Yes, no dreams that I could tell." She sat up slowly, suddenly self-conscious about her tangled hair and wrinkled nightgown. "James, Before you apologize," he said, sitting up as well, "let me say something." Sarah waited, her heart beating fast. "This arrangement we have," James continued, "it was supposed to be simple, clean, but somewhere along the way, you stopped being just a contract to me, Sarah. You became someone I look forward to seeing at dinner, someone whose laugh I listen for in the garden, someone I care about." Her breath caught. "The merger will happen regardless," James said firmly. "But I want you to know that whatever happens between us, whatever we decide about this marriage, it won't be because of any contract or business deal. It will be because we choose it." Sarah felt tears prick her eyes again, but these were different from the ones she had shed in terror. These felt like hope. "I don't know how to do this," she admitted. "I don't know how to be married to someone who actually cares about me." James reached out, gently tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. "Then we'll figure it out together, one day at a time. One night at a time, if that's what it takes." The contract lay forgotten on James's desk downstairs, its neat clauses and conditions no match for the messy reality of two people learning to trust each other. Article 7 remained unmodified in the legal document, but in the quiet sanctuary of Sarah's room, it had been quietly overruled by something far more powerful than any lawyer's language. That night, and every night after, James stayed. Not because any contract required it, but because sometimes the most important promises are the ones we make without words in the dark hours when someone we care about needs us most. The nightmares eventually faded, replaced by dreams of gardens in bloom and laughter echoing through rooms that no longer felt empty. And if Sarah sometimes woke to find James watching her with eyes full of tenderness, neither of them mentioned the contract that had brought them together, but could never define what they had become.